Hey, everybody. Welcome back to our Receive Power series as we join in for our second week of Power Over Relationships. Hope you're all doing well today. Quick summary of last week. One of the most important things that we can apply in relationships, in fact, it is the most important thing that we can apply, period, in our lives. The first and the second greatest commandments in the entire scriptures are to love God with all of our hearts and to love others as ourselves. And until we truly learn to love others with a godly love, I promise you, you will struggle in relationships. It will be a much greater challenge than if you love people the way God has called us to love them. The opposite of love is selfishness. And the world today is living in selfishness. Yes, we have feelings for people, but in reality, it comes down to what am I getting out of this relationship? What is in it for me? And that is not what God is calling us to do. And so focus on love, focus on others. And when we do that, the golden rule becomes a natural part of our lives because we naturally think of ways to treat them in ways that we would want to be treated. That's the golden rule. And so start there. Most important thing that we can do. Now, if we truly love someone, it's naturally going to flow into many of these other traits that we're going to talk about tonight. And I want to start by talking about trust. One of the 10 commandments, thou shalt not bear false witness. If you really break it down, modern day society says one of the 10 commandments is thou shalt not lie. You know, you cannot build a strong relationship if people cannot trust you to be telling the truth. And so one of the key pieces of trust is honesty. People build strong relationships with people that they can trust. And we need to be honest with one another, no matter what the situation is. Now, we do it in love. Sometimes we don't always want to be honest. We need to do it in love. But lying is almost never good in a relationship. In fact, it's never good in a relationship. But there are times when lying may be appropriate. Very, very rare that it would be in our lives. But that's a whole nother lesson in and of itself. So maybe you want to catch me later and ask me about that. But secondly, you build trust by being dependable. And that means you follow through on your promises and your responsibilities. Go check out Proverbs 25:13 if you would like. But we need to be dependable. If we say we're going to do something, we need to do it. And if people can't trust us to follow through, then it damages the relationship. Another part of trust is kindness. We need to treat others as we wish to be treated. Back to the golden rule. We need to be kind to one another because we would like to be treated with kindness. And when we're not treating others with kindness, it damages relationships. We'll get to that in a minute. And finally, the fourth point is humility. We need to admit mistakes, seek forgiveness, and make it right. And when people see that, then they can trust us because they know that we're not so prideful that we refuse to admit when we were wrong. And that builds relationships. Think about it. Back to honesty, to be truthful in all situations. Not just in certain situations. We need to be truthful in all situations. Think about it. You get pulled over by an officer and the kids are in the back seat and you lie to the officer. If the kids watch you lie to other people, why would your children trust you in a challenging situation with them? They already know you're willing to lie if it will benefit you. Think about it. If you're willing to lie for your boss, why would your boss trust you not to lie to your boss? We need to build trust by always telling the truth, by always being truthful. Because if they see us lie in other situations, they know they can't truly trust us in situations with them. All right? Irresponsible people and promise breakers will always struggle with relationships. And that's why dependability is so important. But on the other hand of that, look at Proverbs 25:13 in the CEV version. A messenger you can trust, okay, someone that brings you a word that you can trust in, is just as refreshing as cool water in summer. And that is refreshing. We need to be that kind of a person. We need to speak words that people can trust and believe in. Kindness. Kindness attracts. It's easy to trust someone who is considerate of others. Now look at the opposites of kindness. The opposites are mean, inconsiderate, selfish, harsh, cruel, and even hatred. These are all antonyms or opposites of kindness. These attitudes build relationships of fear and they drive people away. But kindness builds relationships of trust and pulls relationships together. Finally, back to humility. Humble people are careful not to offend others because they're thinking of them. They're putting them first. And so they're careful not to offend others. And obviously, offenses usually put a wedge in relationships. And so when we're careful not to offend others in our own humility and lack of pride, that builds trust, and trust builds relationships. So it's so important that we focus on being truthful, being kind, being humble, and being dependable in order to build trust in relationships, that relationship can grow and be strong. Now, broken trust happens so often in relationships as we make mistakes in these areas, and it can be very difficult to restore. But don't lose hope. You can't change yesterday, but you can start today. You can start first with humility, by apologizing for your past wrongs and promising to make things right, and to just start doing what is right. Do your absolute best to do what you know is right, and hopefully through prayer, through the power of the Holy Ghost, and through your committed actions to do the right things, hopefully time can heal those relationships. So build trust, and watch what God can do in challenging relationships in your life. As you've noticed, I believe I mentioned this last week, we can't change other people. We need to look inside. We need to change ourselves. They might not be trustworthy, but we can be trustworthy despite them. They might not be dependable, but we can be. We need to focus on ourselves, watch the relationship grow as they see someone that's worth having a relationship with, and hopefully that will help influence them to grow the same. And so another big tool, another big piece of this is practicing empathy. I don't care what relationship you are in, you are going to have a time when you don't see eye to eye with somebody. And it's so easy when we disagree with someone, it is so easy for us to start having a judgmental attitude because we're right and they're wrong, right? That's exactly how it works. We don't see eye to eye with them because they're wrong. Our opinion is usually right, right? And I'm saying that a little facetiously, but that's how each of us feels. And we can feel very strongly about that. And so it's very easy to become judgmental about it. And yet Jesus warns us against this type of thinking. I want to read Matthew chapter 7, verses 1 through 5. But once again, I'm going back to the CEV version. But he says, don't condemn others, and God won't condemn you. Verse 2, God will be as hard on you as you are on others. He will treat you exactly as you treat them. You can see the speck in your friend's eye. In other words, you can see this little problem in your friend's eye, but you don't notice the log, the much bigger problem in your own eye. How can you say, my friend, let me take the speck out of your eye, when you don't see the log in your own eye? Verse 5, you're nothing but show-offs. First, take the log out of your own eye, then you can see how to take the speck out of your friend's eye. Now, there are 3 key points I want to share to you from this series of verses. First, we are not called to condemn others. If we do, God will judge us in the same fashion. We are called to love, not to judge, not to condemn. All right? So we got to make sure we do not have a judgmental spirit, a judgmental attitude in our lives. We have to crush that, because if we do not, God will judge us in the same manner. Secondly, we all have issues. Your issues are different than my issues, but you have issues and I have issues. We all have issues. So focus on your imperfections while I focus on my imperfections. And when we do this, after we address our own imperfections, often we are very surprised how little other imperfections and other people seem to be. When we have a judgmental attitude, they can be very large in our eyes. But once we start fixing our own heart and our own spirit, we suddenly start saying, wow, they're not much different than me. I thought they were so bad. I thought they were so far out in left field. They're just in a different field than I am. They're in left field. I'm in the opposite field. We've all got issues. And so deal with our issues. Deal with your personal issues and watch how other people's issues seem to grow smaller. Now, finally, the third point is Jesus is not calling us to be blind. He's calling us not to judge. That doesn't mean we ignore issues. We are called to help. He says, then you can see, once you address your own attitude and spirit, then you can see how to take the speck out of your friend's eye. We are called to help one another. But this requires clear vision, and it requires the right attitude. So first, we got to look inward. Then we can help others and make a difference in their lives. Jesus showed compassion. He only showed a judgmental spirit towards hypocrites. You can see that in Matthew 23, verses 1 through 36. And those who intentionally desecrated the Lord's house, in a similar story, Matthew 21, 12 and 13. This does not give us the privilege to judge others, okay? What he's really showing is 99% of the time, he was showing kindness. He was helping people, and he was not judging them. However, because God did judge people at times, doesn't give us the right to judge. We are not God, okay? So it does not give us the privilege to judge one another, but it does set a precedent that we are to address issues that we have jurisdiction over. If we're in a position of authority, then it's very important that we do address issues. However, we are called to do it in love, with compassion, and with the spirit and attitude of we want to help that person, not judge them. And so that's why it's so important to practice empathy. Everyone's heard, put yourself in the other person's shoes. Don't judge someone until you've walked a mile in their shoes. Because if you can truly understand where that person is coming from, then you'll have a totally different attitude towards that person when you disagree with them. Strive to understand their situation, their logic, their background, where they're coming from. And not only will that help you relate to them better, but it will help you have the right attitude towards them and help you help them. The ultimate example of empathy is Jesus himself. Dying a cruel, horrible, painful death on the cross, he had every right to be judgmental. He had every right to be angry as he looked down at people who were mocking him, who were making fun of him, who were spitting on him. He had every right to crush them. And yet he realized they thought they were doing the right thing. And he said, Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing. They think they're doing right, and in reality, they're doing completely wrong. We are living in a world today that is filled with evil, and people are influenced by that evil, and they believe wholeheartedly that they are standing for what is right. We need to understand that, because if we judge them for the wrong and the evil in their lives, chances are we will never see them saved. But if we can love them like Christ loved them and say, Lord, forgive them and help me to reach out to them because they don't understand what they're doing, then we can truly start making a difference in people's lives and building relationships like we've never known before. Another very, very important aspect of relationships is forgiveness. People are going to hurt you. We need to be humble and seek forgiveness when we hurt others. But we need to be willing to forgive when people hurt us. We are called to forgive one another. In fact, unforgiveness is not allowed in a Christian's life. Matthew 6:14 and 15 says, God will not forgive you if you choose not to forgive others. And so we dare not take an unforgiving attitude lightly. We need to understand how serious this is. And we need to get on our knees and seek God's face and ask Him for the strength and the courage to have the ability to truly forgive someone that's hurt us. It doesn't matter how deep the pain is. It doesn't matter how bad the hurt is. We have got to learn how to forgive. Unforgiveness destroys relationships. Forgiveness is what helps build them. I've seen relationships destroyed over very, very small things because unforgiveness and bitterness sets in. And I've seen relationships restored in very, very big issues. Why? Because of humility and forgiveness. And the relationships are restored, and God can work in those situations. And many times a relationship is stronger than it ever was before. Learn how to forgive. Understand, once again, I've got problems, you've got problems, I'm going to hurt people, people are going to hurt me. When it happens, I just need to let it go. I need to forgive and understand that I'm probably going to hurt them at times too. And I want them to forgive me. Why would I not want to forgive them? That's what builds truly strong relationships. We already had a lesson, power over bitterness. And if you're struggling with forgiveness, I implore you to go back to that lesson on power over bitterness and continue to work on this situation. It is one of the most damaging things in any relationship is a spirit of unforgiveness. Ephesians 4:32, be ye kind one to another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, even as God for Christ's sake hath forgiven you. So very important. And finally today I want to talk about choosing relationships wisely. The best way to have a strong relationship is to be careful not to get in a bad relationship in the first place. Now, obviously, we can't choose all our relationships. We were born into a family. You know, we can choose our job, but we can't necessarily choose our coworkers and the boss that we got after we took the job and different things, you know. So we have some control in those relationships, but if we want to stay in that job, we're stuck with different people that come and go. We can choose our church, but that doesn't mean we can choose the people that come to that church. And so we will be in relationships that we're not necessarily choosing, but we need to be careful about is how deep we allow relationships to go. We need to do our best to make a positive impact on everyone. We don't shun people simply because they believe, think, or act differently than us. Okay? It's the deep relationships. It's committed relationships We can have shallow relationships with everybody as we love them, but we have to be careful not to let certain relationships get too deep. Jesus was ridiculed for spending time with people whom others felt should be avoided or shunned. Matthew 9:10 and 11, it came to pass, as Jesus sat at meat in the house, behold, many publicans and sinners came and sat down with him and his disciples. When the Pharisees saw it, they said unto his disciples, Why eateth your master with publicans and sinners? Jesus was setting the example that we are called to love everyone. We don't shun people. We don't ignore people. We have relationships with sinners. We have relationships with people that need God. We have relationships with people that aren't good at relationships themselves. But we have to understand that acquaintances can turn into close relationships. Close relationships can turn into committed relationships. And close and committed relationships with the wrong people can cause great turmoil in your life. So God told us, the Bible teaches us to love everybody, but be closely connected with those that are of like-minded faith. 2 Corinthians 6:14, be not unequally yoked together with unbelievers. In other words, don't be bonded to and connected with unbelievers. Yes, you can have relationships with them, but they cannot be deep, committed relationships where you are connected. For what fellowship hath righteousness with unrighteousness, and what communion hath light with darkness? It's only logical that people with opposite viewpoints, opposite hobbies, opposite interests, opposite lifestyles, they're going to struggle in a close relationship. It's logical. Those who treat others poorly are going to hurt you if you get too close. It only makes sense. You can see this from a distance. You can see this in a shallow relationship. And you can understand that they don't have the right viewpoints that I have. They don't have the same viewpoints that I have. They don't have a godly, biblical worldview. They've got a worldly worldview. And we don't have the same interests. We don't have the same viewpoints. We don't have the same hobbies. They treat others poorly. It doesn't make sense to get into a close relationship with those type of people. Love them. Have relationships with them. But keep that relationship loose and be careful. Don't allow it to grow deeper. Use that relationship to help drive them towards God so that they can change. And then there may be an opportunity for that relationship to grow deeper. Okay? Don't haphazardly jump into relationships. So very important. Now, what if you're already in a bad relationship? Well, that's not always an easy answer. There's many questions. How strong are you? How well can you handle this relationship? What type of relationship is it? How committed are you to the person? There's no black and white answer. You need to love them, but you can't allow them to destroy you. Friendships that are hurting you more than you are helping them usually should be broken off, because all it's doing is damaging you and it's not making a difference in them. So, like in a work situation, you have to ask yourself, is this job important enough to stay? Is it going to affect my relationship with God? In a family situation, you have to ask yourself, is this worth alienating myself from this loved one? If this is your spouse, you have to ask yourself, have they broken the cardinal rule in a marriage, and that is adultery? Have they broken their marriage vows? And so seek godly counsel. Understand both yourself and the person you are struggling with. Are you cutting off that relationship or desiring to cut it off for selfish reasons? Or should you cut it off because it's the right thing to do? Find friends, find mentors, find people that can encourage you and support you with wisdom and guidance through the process. Many people feel trapped in relationships, and this is one reason it's so important to be careful about the relationships you allow yourself to get into. But if you're already in one, you need to face your fears. You need to get filled with the Holy Ghost. You need to seek wise counsel. You need to take appropriate action. And you just need to trust God that He will be in it as you do what you know is the right thing to do. And so be encouraged, stay strong, use wisdom, get help, stay filled with the power of the Holy Ghost, and watch God work in your relationships. God bless you. Have a wonderful day. Love each and every one of you. God bless.